Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime, where we explore past cases and many times current cases to help you know what could go wrong out there in this crazy world. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today. If you are new to my channel, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button if you are a follower of Deep True Crime, where we like to dig deep and go deep in true crime to explore what has occurred out there. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about America's first serial killer female. That's right. She is known as America's first female serial killer. I kind of butchered that up the first time. My apologies. Anyway, we're going to dive deep and we're going to share with you 6 facts you most likely did not know about Aileen Wuornos, America's first female serial killer. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. You've probably seen some documentaries. You've probably seen, the movie Monster. And now there's another one coming out, American Boogie Woman. Because her crimes were so heinous. Of course, all of these crimes are heinous in many ways, right? But her story's a little more unique. And that's what we're going to be diving into. So, who is Aileen Wuornos? Well, Aileen is an American serial killer. She was originally born Aileen Carol Pittman, born February 29th, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. She died by lethal injection, death penalty, on October 9th of 2002 in Stark, Florida, which is where all of these killings occurred, were in Florida. And she murdered at least 7 people in a 12-month period. That's a lot of people. And this case literally drew national attention to issues such as the relationship between gender and violence and the legal treatment of acts of self-defense by women. Her life was the subject of many documentaries and films like Monster, the movie that was out in 2003. She had a deeply troubled childhood, well known to be a lot of problems. Her parents separated before she was born, and her father later spent time in mental hospitals for child molestation. She was an angry person growing up. When she was 4 years old, she and her brother were sent to live with her grandparents. And in her early teens, she spent time at a home for unwed mothers and then dropped out of school and turned to prostitution. And so she literally had a pretty rough upbringing, which in my opinion should not lead to this type of crime. If you have a lot of hate in you, it could lead to some ugliness. And I'll tell you, I had a pretty rough upbringing, and I could not even imagine ever being able to think like this. To me, this is pretty scary. This is why I became an armchair detective, so I can dive deep into this stuff. Because, when it comes to this, I want to understand, why do people do this? And the purpose of my channel is to keep you aware of what can possibly go wrong. And in 1974, Wuornos was imprisoned for driving while intoxicated and for firing a gun from a moving vehicle. She was arrested numerous times on charges that included armed robbery, check forgery, and even auto theft. By the late 1980s, she was a drifter. In 89 to 90, she was posing as a hitchhiking prostitute. That's when she would kill 7 middle-aged male motorists. All of these were men who were killed, and she would leave their bodies along the highways of Florida and southern Georgia. But they were all killed, from what I'm understanding, in Florida. Now, some do speculate that she may have killed an eighth motorist in the same period, but that has not been backed up. And so she was arrested in early 91, and she admitted to the killings, but claimed that she acted in self-defense after the men assaulted her. And that's where a lot of this comes in. She truly claimed self-defense, but no one really knows, right? And so supporters, she had a lot of supporters, believe it or not, and they viewed her as a strong, independent woman, and even as a heroic figure for defending herself against the male aggression on her. In 92, she was convicted of one of the murders, which was the first one, and sentenced to death. She later pleaded guilty to 3 more of the murders and admitted that she had killed for profit and not in self-defense. She was executed by lethal injection, as I mentioned earlier. And so, some of this getting caught, she had a girlfriend, a living girlfriend. They were together for about 5 years. Tyria Moore. Tyria Moore, her living girlfriend, helped the cops finally catch her girlfriend. And so it's interesting because who would have known she was falling in love with a serial killer? So when Tyria Moore cooperated with the police and coerced a confession out of Aileen Wuornos, the two had been living together in a committed relationship for nearly 5 years. And on a humid Florida evening in 1986, Tyria Moore fatefully met Aileen Wuornos. And, Aileen, she was a blonde. She met her at the Zodiac Bar in Daytona. Weeks earlier, Moore had left her conservative hometown of Cadiz, Ohio, to fully embrace herself being a lesbian. And unbeknownst to her, she was going to be falling in love with a serial killer. And so as the relationship progressed, Wuornos admitted that she had been in and out of jail for theft and armed robbery. She even added that she had been abused and abandoned as a child and often used prostitution as a means to make money. And so Moore, the girlfriend, she tried to discourage these behaviors in Wuornos, but their relationship took a big turn in 1989 when Wuornos confessed that she killed a man. And Wuornos, she told her girlfriend Tyria that her victim was a client who had become abusive and that it was out of self-defense. Moore actually believed her, but then Wuornos killed again and again. And so soon, Moore was forced to talk to the police. Her testimony was damning evidence against Wuornos, and now she was going to help put the serial killer behind bars. Tyria Moore, she was only 24 years old at this time, and when her relationship with 30-year-old Aileen Wuornos began, according to Wuornos biographer Sue Russell, the couple's fateful encounter in Daytona in 1986 dictated the rest of their lives. And she quoted, "From then on, they became inseparable. That was the anchor that Aileen had been looking for." Moore had no qualms about living in motel rooms with Wuornos or crashing on the couches of friends for the 4.5 years they were companions. But Moore did take issues with Wuornos' tendency to turn to prostitution. She did not like that about Aileen Wuornos, so if you're familiar with the actress Christina Ricci, she played Tyria Moore in the movie Monster, not with an S. And so She said, Tyria Moore said, once I found out that she was prostituting, I did everything I could to help her stop doing that. But then on November 30th, 1989, Wuornos came home claiming to have shot and killed a client of hers who raped and beat her. So, Moore, she believed the partner when the victim was identified as a convicted rapist named Richard Mallory. So obviously, that's going to add to, okay, maybe Eileen's not lying to me, right? But then Wuornos started to come home with the belongings of strangers. And so, unknown to Moore, Mallory's murder was followed by that of David Spears. Rest in peace, Mallory. Rest in peace, David Spears. When she murdered David Spears, Wuornos shot him 6 times in May of 1990. And he was left naked in the woods. That same month, she shot rodeo worker Charles Karskadin 9 times and similarly dumped his corpse. Then on June 30th, the same fate befell Peter Siems, a 65-year-old driving his 1988 Pontiac Sunbird from Florida to Arkansas. Now, it's unclear what Aileen Wuornos' girlfriend thought when she arrived home in his car one day. Of course, that is going to bring some red flags as well. On July 4th of that year, Wuornos drove that car off the road, and while inspecting the abandoned crash site, police recovered prints from the car, which were later traced to Daytona pawn shops where Wuornos had sold Peter Siems' belongings. And so then at the last resort, that is when they arrested her. And this is a quick picture of the World Resort. And we don't really know, if what her thought process was at this very time when she was caught. But this was a frequent hangout which became very popular even more after Aileen Wuornos was busted there. And so, now she was wanted for murder and her face was plastered across the news. Moore left Florida to stay with her family in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, Wuornos murdered 3 more men. She murdered a sausage salesman named Troy Burris, a U.S. Air Force Major Charles Humphreys, and a trucker named Walter Antonio. Finally, Moore agreed to talk to the police. And so Aileen Wuornos' girlfriend testifies against her. This Wuornos rampage, it came to an end when police arrested her on a warrant at the Last Resort Biker Bar in Volusia County, Florida. And she was arrested on January 9th of 1991. Authorities, they approached Tyria Moore the following day, finding her ready to cooperate in exchange for immunity. Immunity? Why would she need immunity? What did she do wrong? Well, she knew about these crimes and did nothing about it. That alone can cause you to have your own problems as well, right? And so, my friends, just a quick reminder, if this is something you like to follow, please smash that subscribe button and let me know and let YouTube know you are getting some value from this. Back to the story, my friends. And so she was put up in a Daytona motel room and she was, given a bunch of food, Budweisers. She was instructed to call Wuornos in jail until she admitted to her crimes. She made 11 calls in total and frantically claimed to be terrified of being charged for the murders herself. That's how she would get Wuornos to make her confession. When Wuornos asked if she was being recorded, Moore simply lied to her and said, "No, you're not being recorded. And Wuornos, she tells her over the phone, "You are innocent. I'm not going to let you go to jail. Listen, if I have to confess, I will." And on January 16th, she did. She says, "I don't want more to get messed up for something I did." Wuornos reportedly told police, "I know I'm going to miss her for the rest of my life." Her trial begins on January 13th of 92. And so Aileen Wuornos' girlfriend, she now lives in a private life. You will not know where that girl is. But Tyria Moore, she became a star witness in the case. She took the stand on the fourth day of trial, provided 75 minutes, literally 75 minutes of testimony. And so it was only the second time since Wuornos' arrest that the two had even seen each other. And bring up a little picture here. And so this is Tyria Moore. And great job helping put this crazy girl Aileen Wuornos away. And so she becomes a star witness. She takes the stand and gives 75 minutes of testimony. She claimed that Wuornos had never mentioned Mallory having hurt her before she killed him, and that she appeared unharmed when she calmly recounted killing him. And she says, "We were just sitting around watching TV and drinking a few beers. She seemed fine." Moore left the court that day without ever meeting Wuornos' eyes. It was the last time they ever saw each other as the judge sentenced Wuornos to death via electric chair. Now she would end up getting lethal injection. And so that's the story of Tyria Moore, her girlfriend who would help catch her. And so now you know a little more of Aileen Wuornos. Now let's get into the purpose of this video, the 6 facts you may not know about. And that's exactly what we're going to be covering. So the first thing, and I kind of mentioned this, she claimed that this all happened in self-defense. And truth is, we don't think so. We don't think so at all. Again, she would later say it was not self-defense. But she is one of the most notorious U.S. female serial killers ever. Ever. And she had a tumultuous, traumatic upbringing. Her father committed suicide while in prison for child molestation. And Wuornos and her brother, they were adopted by their maternal grandparents. And so after their mother abandoned them, Wuornos claimed she was sexually and physically abused by her grandfather. She was kicked out of their home, the grandparents' home, when she got pregnant at 14 years old, after allegedly being raped by an older man. The baby was placed for a closed adoption. Wuornos admitted to killing 7 men in a 1-year span while she was a sex worker. She met her victims while hitchhiking along Florida interstates. Her first victim, Richard Mallory, he was only 51 years old. He was found with 3 bullet wounds to his chest. Some of his belongings were found at a pawn shop, and a fingerprint stamped on the pawn shop ticket was matched to an outstanding warrant for Wuornos. She was arrested in 91 at the Last Resort bar during an undercover sting operation. You know, reminders of Wuornos still decorate the bar. Wuornos met Tyria Moore in 1986, the woman she fell in love with. And also the woman who would help investigators piece together the whole picture. And so Wuornos, she says, "I love you if I have to confess, to keep you in trouble," just as I just shared with you on that. And so this is where it's like, it really wasn't self-defense. And she said, I came here to confess to my murder. I'm confessing what I did. Go ahead and put the electric chair to me, you know. So she was even crying in her interview. She said, I shouldn't have never done this. She initially claimed the killings were self-defense. Her legal team also claimed that Wuornos had a personality disorder. She was convicted of Mallory's murder and sentenced to death for his murder. And she pleaded no contest to 5 other murder charges. And reportedly later recanted the self-defense claim. And she was executed by lethal injection on October 9th, 2002 at the age of 46. She even declined her last meal and just had a cup of coffee. Her haunting final words were, if you've never heard this, I'm sailing with the rock. I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th. Like the movie Big Mothership and all, the movie Independence Day, I'll be back. You know, and so truth is, she didn't kill in self-defense, but she did claim, because she said that she killed all of her male victims in self-defense, but despite the horrors and repeated sexual abuse she experienced in childhood, she claimed that she did not hate all men. She told police, I had to kill them. It's like I'm thinking, you bastards, you were gonna hurt me. It was self-defense. It was like, hey man, I gotta shoot you because I think you're gonna kill me. That was part of her self-defense claim. And, you know, she later clarified her views in an interview with the Orlando Sentinel. She said, I'm not a man-hater. I am so used to being treated like dirt that I guess it's become a way of life. I'm a decent person. Those were her words. Those were her words, literally. And so, number 2 facts you may not know. Even though she was in love, she did marry a man. Even though she was in love to a female, she did marry a man early on. And so documentaries and movies about Wuornos tend to focus on her relationship with her girlfriend Tyria Moore, with whom she was living with at the time she committed this string of murders. But before she met Tyria, Wuornos was married to a man named Louis Fell. And Wuornos met Fell, who he was 69 years old at the time, in 1976 after she was hitchhiking to Florida. And their wedding even made society pages. After she assaulted Fell with a cane, he took out a restraining order against Wuornos and had their ill-fated union annulled after just 9 weeks. And he is said to have, she would hit him with his cane in order to get cash from him. That's some craziness by itself. Did you know that one? Let me know in the comments if you knew about that. And so number 3, while she was in prison, she was adopted as an adult. And, while she was in prison, she was adopted by an Aileen Carol. And Aileen was a born-again Christian horse trader who had seen her photo in the local newspaper. And she said that she loves Lee. Now, Lee is for Aileen. Lee was a nickname that she went by. And, she said that she loves Lee more than she loves her own husband. Now, Wuornos later had a falling out with Prale and the lawyer she hired, Stephen Glazer. She accused them of exploiting her story. And guess what? None of them were present at her execution in 2002. The next fact you may not know about. As a child, Aileen was known as a cigarette pig. After allegedly being sexually abused by her grandfather and other males in her family, Wuornos was, as is sometimes the trauma response by sex abuse survivors, sexually precocious. And, that means that at a young age, she learned how to do things that young kids should not even be thinking about. At the age of 13, she traded sexual favors with neighborhood boys for the price of 35 cents and sometimes ORALSEX for cigarettes. They cruelly refer to her as the cigarette pig and sometimes even the cigarette bandit. Did you know that fact? Let me know in the comments if you knew about the cigarette pig. Number 5 fact you may not know about. She is many times referred to as the sexual serial killer. Now, there's a lot of debate out there on whether she was a sexual serial killer. See, since most of her victims were found nude, sexual activities had taken place, and condoms were discovered nearby. So the killings took on a sexual connotation. And that's according to Sue Russell, who wrote In Lethal Intent. But unlike male sexual serial killers, it is not clear whether or not Wuornos experienced an arousal by murdering these victims. So this is kind of one of those commonalities. Both male and female serial killers do have some commonalities. Both can be triggered by stress. And so Sue Russell, she wrote, and she has quoted, "It is plausible and indeed likely that her killing days were precipitated by personal crisis or extra stresses in her home life. As her feelings of powerlessness heightened, those feelings could in turn have triggered an escalation in her need to exert control over another human being." Male serial killers commonly admit that maybe an argument with a woman or parent preceded a murder. That kind of reminds me of a recent story that I had done. If you guys follow my story, I recently did a serial killer story where every time he got upset at his mother, it would cause him to go and commit crimes. He would eventually kill his mother. You're probably familiar with that story if you follow my channel as well. And so, Wuornos, she had direct conflicts and problems with Ty at the times of murders of her victim Mallory Spears, Koskadon, Seams Humphreys, and Antonio. And she is the only female serial killer who FBI profiler Robert Ressler mentioned in his autobiographical history of his 20 years with the FBI. The only female serial killer. If it's one thing you'll find is, sure, there have been a bunch of serial killers in total, but women serial killers is not very common. Not very common. And truth is, when you think of all the female serial killers to ever grace this or to ever be put onto this earth, Aileen Wuornos, she's probably like the top 2. 1 or 2. And so, she was pretty heinous, and the anger that this girl had was unfathomable, literally. Number 6, I kind of briefly mentioned this. Aileen, I mentioned that she did have a child when she was young. I didn't mention who it was, boy or male or female, but it was a son. She had a son, and she repeatedly said that her grandfather sexually abused her and forced her to strip. After being raped by an accomplice of her grandfather, Wuornos became pregnant in 1970. And she gave birth to a boy at a home for unwed mothers on March 23rd, 1971, when she was just 14 years old. The child was placed up for adoption, and a few months after her son was born, she dropped out of school and began supporting herself by, guess what, working as a sex worker. And so, since this was a closed adoption, it is not known what happened to her son at all. So no one really knows what happened to him and where he's at. So hopefully everything is well in his world. My friends, that has been another episode of Deep True Crime. Hey, be sure to click that subscribe button if you're new to this channel, and hit the like button if you got some value out of this video. And let me know what case you would like me to cover and dive deep into. Today you learn about 6 facts you may not know about Aileen Wuornos. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have an amazing, amazing day, and welcome to 2022. I look forward to serving you again. Have a great day. Peace out.